Chapter 37 Gods, Demons, Spirits, Witches and Ghosts. Major bookstores. As long as the books related to the classic of mountains and seas are sold out, it was like it had been robbed. America, Department of Defense. Looking at the China press conference that had ended, Jobs sat there blankly speechless. My mind is still immersed in the shock of the truths. The trials of civilization have existed since ancient times. 5,000 years ago, all civilizations on the earth were destroyed, only the ancient Chinese civilization passed the trial and left behind the trial manual Book of Mountains and Seas, which recorded information on more than 200 monsters. In other words, there are more than 200 rounds of civilized trials. Thinking of this, Jobs couldn't help but swallow his saliva. The truth. It's so disappointing. The United States now, even the first round of monster mess has not been dealt with, and there are still more than 700 hidden undead in the country. There are more than 200 rounds of trials left. The monsters that come will only be more terrifying. In the later period, it is said that there will be terrifying monsters that carry the power to destroy the world. Can they really survive it? The classic of mountains and seas, yes, and the classic of mountains and seas. Jobs raised his head suddenly, as if grasping the last straw, according to what Yang Mo said. The classic of mountains and seas is a civilization trial manual left behind by the ancient Chinese civilization. It contains a lot of information about monsters. Maybe the ancient Chinese civilization recorded the weaknesses and countermeasures of those monsters. Hurry! He took a deep breath, called his secretary and said, "Hurry up and find a way to get me a Chinese ancient book, the classic of mountains and seas. It must be the original." The secretary was stunned for a moment. I heard Jobs shaking his head again and saying, "No, one copy is not enough. You buy 1,000 sets first, and you must ensure that everyone in the Department of Defense has one copy." Secretary, Tubing, the world's largest video platform. The video of Yang Mo's press conference was also uploaded here by someone who was interested. One stone stirs up 1,000 waves. It caused an uproar, shocked the world. What? The trial of civilization occurred thousands of years ago? Hiss. Was the Mayan civilization destroyed in the last trial of civilization? Atlantis seems to be silent in the sea. Is it related to the trial of civilization? What kind of monster can sink a land? For verification, people from all over the world have found those civilizations that have collapsed. Discover, behind the collapse of civilization is a disaster more terrifying than the last. That kind of supernatural and extraordinary power makes people despair. No wonder, the Earth has evolved for 4.6 billion years, and all civilizations have been destroyed, buried forever in the long river of history. While shocked, people from all over the world also discovered the value of the classic of mountains and seas and began to purchase the classic of mountains and seas from various channels. Try to learn more about monsters through the classic of mountains and seas. For a while, the classic of mountains and seas has been snapped up around the world, sold out, leap to the top. It has surpassed the Western Bible and become the best-selling book in the world. China Monster Research Institute. After hosting the press conference, Yang Mo returned here. Once back, I saw Zhao Ziyan and others holding a copy of the classic of mountains and seas in their hands and studying, shaking his head, muttering words. It's just, the words in the classic of mountains and seas are obscure and difficult to understand. They studied it for a long time, but could not find any information left by their ancestors. Everyone was crestfallen and scratching their heads. "Dean, this book of mountains and seas is too obscure." Zhao Ziyan took the initiative to find Yang Mo, pouted and complained, "Since it is a civilization trial manual, ancestors just say it directly, why do you want to be the Riddler? It is obviously a trial manual left to future generations of civilization, but they've been thinking about it for so long, still not found any useful information. At most, I know the looks, appearance, and habits of those monsters. It is not very helpful in passing the civilization trial. This is not how you read the classic of mountains and seas." Seeing this, Yang Mo raised the corners of his mouth slightly. Previous lives, the analysis of the classic of mountains and seas has consumed the efforts of countless scientific research teams. He was one of them. It can be said, the method is wrong, efforts are in vain. Let's do this. You inform the researchers in the hospital and the people in the demon hunting team, and I will teach you how to analyze the classic of mountains and seas. Yang Mo thought for a while. He spoke. With the help of the press conference this time, he revealed the truth behind the classic of mountains and seas. On the one hand, it is to give the Chinese people confidence. He has personally experienced 12 rounds of civilization trials and knows the horror of trials. The further back you go, the more desperate. If a civilization loses confidence, It is basically not far from destruction. On the other hand, I want to use the power of all the people of China to continue analyzing the Book of Mountains and Seas. That in the previous life, China went through 12 rounds of trials and was always struggling on the edge of life and death. Only part of the information about its ancestors was analyzed in this trial manual. There are too many secrets hidden, not yet discovered. Yes. Zhao Ziyan looked happy and turned around quickly, started notifying others. Half an hour later, in a conference hall that can accommodate thousands of people, researchers from various departments and combatants from the demon hunting team were all gathered here, sat on the seat, looking ahead with concentration, looking excited, full of expectations. I believe everyone has read the classic of Mountains and Seas. Front Yang Mo glanced at everyone and picked up a Book of Mountains and Seas in his hand, slowly spoke. The ancient ancestors of China have personally experienced the trials of civilization and are fully aware of its horror, so they specially wrote this book and passed it down, leaving it to future generations of civilization. When you open the classic of Mountains and Seas, you cannot read it as an ordinary ancient book. You should read it as a civilization trial manual. Dismantled step by step from macro to micro. Look at the people below who are listening carefully to the class. Yang Mo took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, first of all, it contains information about more than 200 monsters, and these monsters can be divided into 5 races. Talk goat here. He turned around, picked up the chalk and wrote these 5 races on the blackboard behind him. God, demon, spirit, witch, ghost. Below, Zhao Ziyan, Zhang Yangguang and others looked at these 5 races with blank expressions on their faces, but then, Yang Mo began to explain. Shin refers to a family of gods. In the Book of Mountains and Seas, they have mastered various supernatural powers, such as the sun god Emperor Jun, the moon god Changxi, and many mountain gods. The words just fell. The sound of swallowing saliva could be heard at the scene. Everyone was shocked, that is to say. At the later stage of the trial, will these gods also come to various countries as monsters? It can be called God by ancient ancestors. It is enough to illustrate their terror. Actually, in the eyes of ancient ancestors, the so-called gods are just a little more powerful than humans. Yang Mo glanced at the crowd, with a sarcastic smile on his lips. They are all defeated by the ancient ancestors. Chapter 38. The second round of trials begins. It is different from Western civilization. China, there is no absolute worship of the so-called gods. So God and immortal, these two words are all evolved from humans. Fairy, they are just people standing on high mountains. We have reached the later stage of the civilization trial, faced with the coming of the emperor in Changxi. The ancient ancestors were still fearless, retrograde and attacked the gods. Various vigorous struggles were launched, although tragic, but we still won the final victory and passed the extremely cruel civilization trial. God is also a defeated general. Zhang Yangguang's heart trembled and he murmured softly, I was deeply attracted by what the ancestors did. Be fearless, retrograde and defeat the gods, what a spirit. At this moment, Yang Mo's voice sounded faintly. The second race, demons, refers to the demon clan. It is recorded in the classic of Mountains and Seas that monsters are transformed by beasts, the number of times they appear the most, and the most fond of eating people. The 001 undead that appeared in the first round of trials is one of the demons. Hearing this, the expressions of the people below moved slightly, and they suddenly thought of the monster illustrations in the classic of Mountains and Seas. Weird-looking demon clan, its appearance is similar to that of creatures on Earth, but not the same. Almost 90% of the demon clan, the characteristic of cannibalism has been recorded. The third race, Ling, is the spiritual race transformed from the essence of heaven and earth. Yang Mo pursed his lips and continued, they absorbed the essence of heaven and earth before they were born, whose representatives are the 4 spirit beasts, Xinglong, White Tiger, Suzaku, and Xuanwu. The spirit clan different from the weird-looking monsters, they are born by absorbing the essence of heaven and earth, but the destructive power, but it is much stronger than ordinary monsters. Often when the spirit tribe comes, the number of casualties caused is the most terrifying. The fourth race is the Wu tribe. According to the records in the classic of Mountains and Seas, after the arrival of the Wu tribe, they occupied half of the wilderness and used people to refine medicine, raise the body and kill countless creatures. Everyone heard this. He quickly picked up the Book of Mountains and Seas on the table and started reading it quickly. As expected. In the classic of Mountains and Seas, the Western classic of Great Wilderness, it is recorded that there is a mountain named Fingju in the Great Wilderness, Jade Gate, where the sun and moon enter. There are 10 witches in Lingshan: Wuxian, Wuji, Wupan, Wupang, Wugu, Wuzhen, Wuli, Wudian, Wuxia, and Wuluwa, who have risen and fallen since then. Only 10 witches. The clan conquered half of the wilderness? Zhao Ziyan swallowed and looked horrified. The strength of this Wu clan alone, isn't it too strong? The fifth race is the ghost race. Yang Mo paused for a moment, looked at the crowd and said, "The Book of Mountains and Seas records that it has a human face and a snake body, and can communicate with heaven and earth, channeling the dead, reconnecting the lost souls to survive in illusory bodies." Ghost? When Zhao Ziyan and others heard this, they couldn't help but take a breath of air. Always, there are records related to ghosts in various Chinese legends. Unexpectedly, it also comes from the classic of Mountains and Seas. It originated from the civilization trial 5,000 years ago. That is to say, our deceased relatives and friends still have a chance to live in the form of ghosts? Zhang Yangguang suddenly stood up and asked, suppressing the excitement in his heart. After learning that there are ghosts in the world, this was the first thing he thought of. It's not impossible. Yang Mo was stunned for a moment, then nodded, but the premise is that we can stop the ghost clan from coming, successfully capture them, and control their abilities. Ghost, although scary, but just think about them. He believes that every Chinese person will feel extremely safe. Actually, in the previous life, some scientists have proposed the idea of summoning those who have passed away and resurrecting them in another way. For this, science fiction heaven plan also includes a crucial link called Underworld. Brothers, I will definitely resurrect you. Zhang Yangguang listened, but he was excited and murmured, quietly. He clenched his fists. And Yang Mo? He turned around and looked at everyone. Awestruck, these 5 races that appear in the classic of Mountains and Seas are the enemies we will face in the future. They are very strong. But the ancestors also recorded many of their weaknesses and characteristics, as well as many undiscovered secrets, in the classic of Mountains and Seas. If you have any breakthroughs in your research, please be sure to report it as soon as possible. Below, everyone heard this. All are aware of the urgency of the crisis. He nodded solemnly. The 5 major races are incredibly powerful. They must race against time to analyze all the secrets in the classic of Mountains and Seas, leave no stone unturned, improve China's strength. To face the next civilization trial. Time passes slowly. 2 days later, early morning. The majestic sound sounded again in the sky above the earth. The second round of civilization trials has officially begun. Fell with the sound Skyrim. A series of meteors appeared like an epithelemy, fleeting, eventually disappeared within the borders of various countries. Oh, buy it. Has it started? There are still hundreds of 001 undead in our country, and now the second batch of monsters has come? Damn civilization trial, you asked me if you want to participate? These monsters must be hiding among ordinary people again. Everyone, please quickly check whether any of your relatives have been replaced by monsters. It's over, it's over, it's over. It's just the beginning. People from all over the world fell into invisible fear, panic, terrified and uneasy. The public sentiment that countries in various countries had managed to stabilize through press conferences suddenly collapsed. The people are restless and the order is chaotic. Problems such as security and crime are occurring more and more frequently around the world. Scenes of the eve of the end of the world are everywhere. The United States Department of Defense, are these people too glass-hearted? When Jobs listened to reports of security problems from various places, his face turned livid. A group of unruly people don't want to trust the country at all. In order to cope with the second round of trials, they clearly made preparations in advance and held a press conference to stabilize public sentiment. The result? It's useless. The second round of civilization trials has just begun, and the order that was finally established collapsed again. Highway robbery, $0 shopping, kidnapping, rape, various cases, more and more frequent. How about, let's hold another press conference? The assistant smiled bitterly and suggested in a low voice, no need. Jobs waved his hand and pondered for a moment, turned around and asked, is there any latest action from the Monster Research Institute in China? Not yet. Hear the words, Jobs couldn't help but frown. In the first round of civilization trials, the processing capabilities of the Chinese Monster Research Institute amazed the world. He originally wanted to follow a wave of copying homework, now it seems that I can only find a way to deal with it myself. Chapter 39 Monster, this civilization is full of weirdness. After passing the order, the Ministry of National Defense will immediately dispatch experts and professors to establish a monster research group. After thinking for a short time, he made a decision quickly and issued orders one after another. Deploy elite troops from the army, equip them with the most advanced weapons, and form a monster hunting team. Set up a 24-hour non-stop live broadcast room and open a reporting hotline all day long. From now on, a nationwide monster census will be carried out, and a nationwide screening will be conducted every 3 days. Next to the secretary in charge of records recorded these measures one by one, but remember it. He suddenly found that every measure seemed familiar. They are all the methods implemented by China in the first round of civilization trials. It cannot be said that there is no difference, all I can say is exactly the same. Of course, we have to learn from other people's excellent experiences. In this regard, Jobs explained without blushing and out of breath, Secretary, at the same time. To control domestic chaos, countries around the world quickly adopted positive responses, including the United States. The other 5 permanent countries followed closely behind. Copy China's actions in the first round of civilization trials. Search nationwide. At the same time, countries appeal to all people. Work together. Let's get through the difficulties together. Once you find clues related to monsters, report them quickly to reduce unnecessary casualties. China. At a time when countries around the world are in dire straits, here, it seems out of place. The people were not as panicked as they imagined. On the contrary, after hearing that the second round of trials had begun, everyone felt as if they had been given a shot of blood. The man's hand holds a copy of the Classic of Mountains and Seas. Walking around, traveling around, actively search for monsters or brothers. I have already inquired, and the Monster Research Institute has not introduced any measures. This shows that this round of monsters are not to be feared and do not pose any threat. Our physique has improved by 100%. It's time to share some of the pressure with the country. We in China have to pass the test. It's just the second round, and there is no need for the country to take action. Be our monsters, right? Give them a little shock from China. The first round of rewards, gave great confidence to the Chinese people. Coupled with the press conference held by Yang Mo, it made the whole people excited. Those angry youths, every day they clamor for the slogan, "It is our duty to rebuild the glory of our ancestors." Go to the street, ask everyone you meet, open and shut, it's, "Are you a monster in disguise?" Yuncheng. A residential building. This civilization is too scary. A young girl was curled up on the bedside with her legs in her arms, recalling what happened during the day. Shivering. It was one of the monsters that came in the second round, stealing this woman's body and disguising her charming appearance. I was thinking about going out, look for several prey. After eating, your strength will increase. The result, after going out, she regretted it. There are fanatics everywhere, holding a book in their hands and asking everyone, "Are you a monster?" She had only been out for half an hour when she was questioned several times. She was so frightened that she thought she had been discovered. Why are the people in this country not afraid at all? She murmured softly. I am puzzled. As an invader, she participated in the trials of many civilizations. Those civilizations, towards them, they were all in inexplicable awe and fear, and they were afraid to avoid them. But this country, but everything is weird to fear. She couldn't smell this kind of smell at all. On the contrary, those people are still looking for them all over the world. Think of this. She picked up her phone and decided to search for relevant information about this country first. Half an hour later, in the bedroom, there was a sound of gasping air hiss. Her delicate facial features were filled with shock and disbelief. They received an SSS level evaluation in the last round of trials? She couldn't help but swallow, her lips trembling slightly. Oh no, the trial of civilization has radiated across the world. Extremely cruel, generally speaking, not to mention SSS level. Even S-level evaluation is very rare. In her memory, I have never seen any civilization obtain SSS level rewards in trials. This means perfect pass, destroying all the invaders in that round. National physique increased by 100%. Monster Research Institute, Book of Life and Death, Yang Mo. Her slender fingers slid across the phone screen and finally stopped on a name, Yanjing, Monster Research Institute. Dean's office. Dean, the second round of monsters has arrived. Do we, China, really don't need to do anything? Zhao Ziyan looked at Yang, who was studying the Classic of Mountains and Seas with his head down. Mo, there was a deep look of worry in his eyebrows. Today, the second round of trials has been started for 10 hours. Countries in various countries have successively launched nationwide censuses to screen the whereabouts of monsters within their borders, but, as the most authoritative monster research institute in China, but there has been no action. On the contrary, the people, expanding more and more. More positive than them, the fear of monsters is gone, but if this continues, she is worried that something will happen sooner or later. In the Book of Life and Death, Have you still not captured the brainwave fluctuations of abnormal creatures in the territory? Yang Mo did not answer directly, but asked. No. Zhao Ziyan shook her head and reported, since the second round of monsters came, the Book of Life and Death was activated again, scanning the country, but no brainwaves other than humans were found. For this, she was also puzzled. Book of Life and Death is the first important national weapon created in the Science Fiction Heaven project. This has many amazing features, can scan the brainwaves of all living beings within 9.6 million square kilometers and record it in the database, equivalent to entering a name, erase at any time. But now that the Book of Life and Death has been activated, the fluctuations of those invading monsters have not been collected. This is very surprising. This is the reason why I haven't taken action yet. Yang Mo's eyes flickered and he shook his head. Do you think that monsters that can't even be searched in the Book of Life and Death can rely on the national census to find these monsters? Can the means be found? Zhao Ziyan was stunned for a moment. I vaguely understood what Yang Mo meant. The Book of Life and Death can record the information of all living things in China, and even the brainwaves of various animals can be recorded in the book. If even this fails to record the brainwaves of those monsters, then we want to rely on a census of all employees, even more impossible. Then let's just wait and see what happens. Yang Mo picked up the Classic of Mountains and Seas and continued to study it. Time passes. 3 days later, the United States Department of Defense. Sir, the results of the nationwide census in the past few days have been remarkable. The monster hunting team has wiped out a total of 58,001 undead. When Jobs heard the results reported by his subordinates, he felt unhappy. Chapter 40, Investigating News, Clues to the Monster. 3 consecutive days, census nationwide. The monsters found were all 001 undead. The new monsters that came in the second round didn't even see their shadows. What on earth are these monsters? He frowned, his expression full of worry. Unknown things, often the most frightening. In comparison, the 001 undead, whose habits have been touched, are no longer so scary. They have high defensive attributes at best and are extremely difficult to kill. But the new monster has arrived. Everything is unknown. How much damage will it cause to the United States if it has been hidden in secret? Minister, something bad has happened. Suddenly the secretary hurriedly broke into the office, interrupting Jobs' thoughts. What's the matter? You're so flustered. Jobs' face darkened and he said displeasedly. Just now, large-scale demonstrations broke out in various states, demanding the cancellation of universal census and control, saying that this restricts their personal freedom and violates humanitarianism. What? Hear the words. Jobs' expression changed drastically and he quickly looked at the information in his secretary's hand. There are 50 states in the United States. There were actually large-scale demonstrations in 32 states, openly criticizing their Ministry of Defense and demanding an immediate end to control measures, guarantee everyone's rights to freedom and equality. It's only been 3 days and they can't stand it anymore? After reading it, Jobs' face was livid with anger and his body was shaking a little. Oh no, these measures taken by China lasted for a full month. The whole nation is extremely cooperative, but when the same measures were taken to their country, things changed instantly. What does it mean to protect everyone's rights to freedom and equality? Monster Current, his life was about to be lost. What more freedom and equality do we need? Are these people out of their minds? He slapped the table hard and couldn't figure it out. Then we should continue to control it? The secretary on the side asked softly at Jobs. All of a sudden he felt an inexplicable feeling of heartache and exhaustion. At the same time, countries around the world, after 3 consecutive days of control and screening, countries such as Gaul and Sakura have uncovered a large number of 001 undead. Only no trace of the new monster was found. 3 consecutive days of high-pressure control. It also gradually aroused resentment and resistance among the general public. Large-scale demonstrations have broken out in various countries, demanding the removal of controls and opening up and freedom. It brings many difficulties to the work of detecting monsters. Officials from various countries conducted an emergency press conference as soon as possible, calling on the people to treat it rationally and follow the arrangements, but the people turned a deaf ear. Does not cooperate with the control and full employee screening at all. Until this moment, the top leaders of various countries have truly realized that China's set of measures only apply to China. In the face of disaster, only China can unite as one and respond as a nation. Maybe it is this cohesion that allows Chinese civilization to last for 5,000 years, still blooming with brilliance. There have been many superpowers in the history of the earth, but for thousands of years, there is only one superpower that has survived to this day: China. Monster Research Institute. Dean's Office. Calculate the time, it should be almost time. Yang Mo put down the Book of Mountains and Seas in his hand and called his assistant Zhao Ziyan. He ordered, collect all the news about strange events at home and abroad in the past 3 days and send them to my office. Yes. Zhao Ziyan was a little surprised, but she didn't ask any more questions. Leave in a hurry and move quickly. 3 hours later, she walked into Yang Mo's office holding a large pile of press releases. Dean, this is a summary of all the news of strange incidents that have occurred at home and abroad since the second round of civilization trials began. A total of 492 incidents. Thank you for your hard work. Yang Mo took the manuscript and quickly read it. Yangcheng Daily, men's underwear is frequently stolen in a certain community. Is it a distortion of human nature or a loss of morals? Liangcheng Briefing, the man who jumped through the window to steal fell asleep, was awakened by the head of the household and was controlled by the police. Yuqing TV, a man removed the traffic lights on the roadside to illuminate his home. China News, surprising phenomenon. Since the start of the second round of civilization trials, there has not been a single abnormal death case across the country. Yunqing Evening News, a man was cheated of 110,000 yuan by chatting with the scammer because he was curious about how the scammer swindled money. In Zhao Ziyan's surprised eyes, Yang Mo glanced at each manuscript quickly. At the same time, he picked out the suspicious manuscripts and put them aside. It took a full 2 hours. I just finished reading the news about these 492 strange incidents. Dean, are there any clues about monsters here? Zhao Ziyan, who was watching the whole process, saw Yang Mo stop and finally couldn't help but asked out of curiosity. Not bad. Yang Mo nodded. But when I was sorting it out, I also paid special attention to these news, and I didn't find any reports of monsters in it. Zhao Ziyan blinked. The monster that came this time is very cunning. It's normal that you didn't notice it. Yang Mo smiled slightly, pointed to the 3 press releases that he had picked out. Zizhou TV station, recently, 2 bodies were stolen from a funeral home in our city, leaving their families in inexplicable grief. Luqing Evening News, the old man in the countryside disappeared from the morgue living room, and his family members said they saw a white bird. Sioux City Weekly, bodies frequently disappear from the morgue, and experts suspect there is illegal organ trading behind them. Read these 3 news articles. Zhao Ziyan couldn't help but widen her eyes, vaguely understanding something. My breathing became a little short. You mean, these things are all done by monsters? To date, it is already the 4th day since the start of the second round of civilization trials within China, but it has always been calm. There are not even cases of disappearance or accidental death. Monster, it's like it didn't come. Some people even suspect that the monsters coming this time may be peace lovers. Yes, they are worried about being discovered, so they have been hiding in disguise, secretly stealing the dead bodies, and growing in secret. Yang Mo nodded and said solemnly, they are too cunning. Zhao Ziyan took a breath of air. The more she thought about it, the more terrifying it became. With the IQ of these monsters, it is too high hunting the living, afraid of exposure, so secretly steal the dead bodies. After all, killing and stealing corpses are completely 2 different things. The former will inevitably attract national attention, but the latter, except for Yang Mo, I am afraid no one will notice. Think of this. She quickly said, then I will notify the local police immediately and ask them to investigate these corpse theft cases closely. Maybe they can follow the clues, find out the monsters coming in the second round of trials. It's useless. Yang Mo waved his hand, shook his head and said, this time the monster is extremely good at disguise. Unlike the 001 undead, its appearance is no different from ordinary people. What the undead are good at is defense. Therefore, when disguised, the flaws will be revealed to some extent, but this time the monster, do you already know the identity of the monster? Zhao Ziyan spoke curiously, with a slightly surprised look on her face.